But we're talking about animals right now. So what I would like to do is I'd like to give people either a first time go or a recap, if they've heard it before, of, and this time from your perspective strictly, of me contacting you going, hey Caroline, so something's happened.
Keith, you're expecting me to remember on
Well,
one coffee.
I mean, I could do mine again, but
Oh, it contacted me, and you were super excited talking about this and how you could feel it, blah, blah, blah. And I just knew it had moved into me, which is what I told you, which was a bit odd, I thought, because I wasn't looking for it or whatever. And the next thing I know, there it is.
well, let's back up a couple of steps if we could, because I feel like there's a couple of things that people are going to need to understand
Yeah,
hearing this for the first time.
you go for it.
I got a hold of Caroline. I'll do the setup here. I got a hold of Caroline saying, hey, so I've had this energy move into my body, really strong in my nervous system, and it's really crazy. And the next thing I know, you're going, yeah, well, I think you said something that was moving from top to bottom. Is that what you said? From your head down to your toes, and then there's your setup. Okay, and go.
Yeah, and then I remember you showed me the picture that the gentleman had drawn of the lot
Right.
with the pencil sketch, and immediately I saw the fetus or the baby in it. Now, neither of you had seen that until I pointed it out, and the moment I did, you're just, how did I miss that? Which I found really interesting, because you usually see all that kind of stuff.
Missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I genuinely can't remember the first animal. I think it was Anya, because he was really crook. That's my cat.
Crook means your cat was ill.
Very ill. He's still ill, but he was iller. I think we've got on top of it, we think it's Addison's disease, which is incredibly rare in cats. So of course it's going to be my cat if it's rare. And he grabbed at it. I remember that. He and Dakota, my horse, aka Unicorn, they grabbed at it like there was no tomorrow.
Meaning the light.
Yes. And then I remember you talking about the two Pyrenees mountain dogs that come up to your place regularly, and one took the light and one wouldn't, which again I found interesting. And by this stage we'd started to play around with it. And I remember one of my friends, she's very ill at the moment, and I had said to you, I'd contacted you and told you what the story was and said, do you mind if I share this with her? I know it's early, but you know, she's really ill. And you and I were talking, and I had been thinking about the best way of passing the light to her. And you had said to me, have you done it already? And I went, no, I've been thinking about the best way to do it. And you've gone, well, guess what? She's already got it. So that I found interesting. And then Mecco, my Sarplananak.
That's a dog, a big breed of dog, correct?
Yeah, big hairy thing. How many times do you reckon you and I tried to put the light in him? And we tried and we got it once or twice and it sputtered out again. And he just, to this day, I do not know why. And it would have been easily a month to 6 weeks. And we had tried multiple times, and it was sort of like, talk to the hand, I'm not having it. And then Unicorn, bless him, said, do you want me to do it?
And Unicorn's your horse. So Caroline's horse was asking her, right? It was going, hey, look, he's not taking it from you. Maybe I can basically convince him to do it, right?
And I was talking to you at the time. I was down the paddock, and I went, yep, you know. And sure enough, I contacted you, and you checked in 5 minutes later and went, hang on, it's there, and it's solid, and it's growing. To which the horse replied, and I need a T-shirt for it, if you want something done, ask a unicorn to do it. I want.
Are you guys catching that, right? So Caroline has the advantage here of being able to speak with her animals, and then they're speaking back, and she is communicating, hence animal communication.
Yeah, and I mean, really, with how sick Mecco is, he shouldn't be here. I mean, I know he's here for a good time, not a long time, but my horse vet called me last week. I don't think I told you this. And she's incredibly empathetic, and yeah, she dotes on him. Well, she'd been going to go to a cardiologist because she'd been having so much chest pain. And she has had a slight history, and then suddenly went, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel like what I normally get. I don't think that's mine. So she's ringing me going, how's Mecco doing? I went, yeah, he's not too bad. He's had a few panting episodes, and I've used the My Health. That's the Nest My Health. And it's all gone away. Why? And so obviously those panting episodes have been the chest pain, because the moment she realized it wasn't her chest pain, she hasn't had any problems since.
Oh, no, I didn't know
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. So clearly he's not as well as we think, but when you look at how bad he's had a heart attack 6 months ago now, none of us thought he'd survive that. He was so bad by the time I got him to a vet friend of mine that he didn't have a femoral pulse at all. And she's a Chinese practitioner. So you're not going to get much closer to death than that. And
no, so your dog had a heart attack 6 months ago, and there was basically no pulse for a while.
Not in the back leg.
The femoral pulse. Yeah.
There was no. He was. I actually thought he went so white. I thought he had a splenic bleed out. And when we hoisted him down there, she's going, he's got no femoral pulse. We're not x-raying or doing anything till we do some transformational acupuncture, and that got him up and going again. And then got him to another clinic and got the ultrasound done and. So, yeah, that was, bless him, that was the day after Boxing Day. So he was very good. He didn't do it on a public holiday. That's usually what animals do. He waited, bless him. So, and we know it's only a matter of time. He's on a bunch of meds, and he's going downhill. And if he has another heart attack, I'll call it, because I'm not going to allow him to be in continual pain. But with what he's at, he shouldn't be here. And it's clearly the light. And the last couple of days only, I've noticed, because he's deliberately picking the shorter walks if I allow him to make a choice, which, hence obviously I'm doing. When I do the Phoenix Force Light exercise, for a dog that used to shoot off whenever I do energy work, he actually now comes in and sits down at my feet. So that I'm finding very interesting.
And that's a good point to bring up. I mean, whether it's an animal or a human being, there's a certain amount of time that I'm loving the avatar terminology, but these avatars will function for a certain amount of time, the way things are designed at this point, and then they don't. And we all know that that's death. And as much as as the human culture, I mean, I'm involving most of Western humanity anyway, I'll say Western humanity, that we like to avoid it. We like to avoid talking about it, or that it's a reality. But it's just, that's the cycle. And I think, and you've had this conversation before, is the quality of the life good? So if the light can move into a person or into an animal and improve the quality of the life that animal or person's having, that is certainly worth something. And it may not give them an extra year or 2 years or whatever, but if the quality improves, then that is a beautiful thing. And no matter what we do, no matter what talents, gifts, tools we have, it may not extend someone's life. But if we can improve the quality while they're here, and also give them grace upon exit.
Easing the transition. Quality of life is the single most important thing. And particularly in my job, I've got to say, I really struggle with people that drag it out. At the vet clinic at the moment, the vet won't even allow me in the room anymore. She knows me a little too well. But quality has to be first and foremost. But absolutely, how you go is as important as how you live. And being able to give them that grace, as you said, when they're exiting, and I remember years ago, Tuvok, my Ridgie Roddycross, he basically taught me communication. And then when I got to the stage I was relying on him to do the work, he left. Looking back now, I can absolutely see the pattern. And he had said to me at the time, do you want me to come back? And I said to him, unfair. Go right now. You've got a view of yay much. You need to have this much. If you want to, when you go up there or when you transition, knock yourself out. But don't make any promises or decisions till you see the full picture. And few communications I've ever had with any of mine after they transition, because I just don't hear, I'm too close, was what a huge gift that was, because he would have honoured that promise and come back. But in actual fact, for his progression, it was better at that time if he didn't. So that's something I've always remembered. And that's, you know, the more light they have, the quicker they're going through the cycle, as with us. And it's a huge gift. And oh, that's interesting. I'd never thought of that, Keith. Meko is actually showing me what the light is doing, and particularly in the area I'm in. We've had stabbing just over the road in the park. We've had attempted child abduction.
You're really low in my mix. You've had what now? I couldn't hear you.
Stabbing. Someone stabbing,
stabbing.
someone.
Got it.
Other side of the road. So literally pretty much outside my front door. We've had an attempted child abduction, usual stuff, you know, drugs, blah, blah, blah. And what he's telling me is the light is acting as a buffer between him, sort of, this is him, here's the light, other side of that is the negativity, energetic negativity. So it's acting as a buffer here, so it's not actually touching his body. So we've just learned something.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't this be true? I suspect it is, that animals, of course, they are much more, as you're suggesting, they're much more aware of that line between this incarnation and not being in this incarnation. For them is so thin. They don't have this massive resistance to the death cycle and the life cycle.
No, I remember one of the very first, I hadn't even learned to communicate properly. It was through Reiki. And it was a dog I ultimately took on with skin problems. And he said to me, why is it more people don't use Reiki? Don't use energy. Is it that they are afraid of it, or does it bring them to question their religious beliefs?
Yeah.
And I mean, by which stage I've sort of gone, and we never that my brain kicked in. I was completely discombobulated, and that was the end of that. We never did continue that conversation, but I found it incredibly interesting. And whereas we tend to think of our life as the book, so to speak, dogs and cats, they know what's going on. They know that it's literally a page or a chapter in the book, and this isn't everything. So they do view it slightly differently, but it doesn't mean they don't, that they value it any less.
Mm-hmm. But they also don't have the same degree of fear of the actual passing that we do, typically, do they?
Ironically, it was a dog of I took on that I've ever known that's had a fear of death. And I mean, don't get me wrong, survival instinct does kick in. But one dog stayed alive, and he had an osteosarcoma. It was actually a dog I took off a vet I'd admired. That's why I got my Ridgy Roddy Cross Tuvok, because I wanted a dog like Tex. And then the vet moved to the country, and he killed sheep a couple of times. And I'd said to him when visiting the week before, you know, if you ever don't want Tex, and he calls me up and goes, you know what you were saying about Tex? Do you want him? Because he's just been shot. He's got in and killed a few more sheep, and I can't have him anymore. So I grabbed him. And then Tex ultimately wound up with an osteosarcoma. And he's the only dog I've ever known that was genuinely scared of death. And so come time to do the deed, because the bone cancer is incredibly painful, and it was a front leg, and it metastasized to the lungs, and it was all pretty horrible. So I had to pull the pin. Obviously, the vet that used to own him wanted to do the deed, which was fine. So I drove up there, and I had the choice of then driving an hour and a half home or half an hour further up the road to a friend's place. And I figured I was less likely to stack the car half an hour up the road. When he went, he took me part way. And I remember driving to this woman's place and all the colours. If anyone's seen those Aurosoma stands that are backlit, how the colours are beautiful and vibrant, that's how it was. And the feelings of love, of peace, everything. I guess, yeah, wasn't that dissimilar to what people describe as an NDE?
Mm-hmm.
And was amazing. And someone rang me and they said, oh, gee, you sound different. You sound so damn happy. So I couldn't tell them. I just put, and I went, yeah, no, maybe not. And when I got to this woman's gate, Tex had clearly been seeing me safely to this woman's gate. And when I got to a gate of the driveway, he said, I have to go now. I've taken you as far as I can go. You're going to have to go back. I've got to, pass or transition fully, which clearly he did. And as high as I'd been, I'll never forget that day. I was as high as a kite and then just came crashing down. And it was pretty tough. But I've never forgotten that. That was one of the biggest gifts I've ever been given.
So here's a question that I have that's an offshoot of that story. When you're speaking with different animals, is there a, because I don't, how do I ask this? Are there elements of an animal's soul that are also potentially from underneath the oversoul or overmind that produces all kinds of life expression? I'm saying, so if you have an overmind, let's call it an overmind or an oversoul, and there's multiple souls, if you will, that are being under that family, and then there's the expression in the timeline of the souls. When an animal transitions back out of this reality and into that realm, across that veil, do they come back as a human, as another kind of animal? Is a dog always a dog when it comes back, or is it other?
Most of the time they have something they prefer. I've had one or two of mine come back, but you
broke up for me there, Caroline. They come back as what?
I've had a couple of mine come back as the same species as a dog, but the very first deceased animal I ever spoke with was a glorious 17-hand warm blood 30 plus years ago. And
I missed all of that. What was that? What kind of creature?
Warm blood, big horse, 17 hands.
Oh, okay.
And that was 30 years ago. And he came back to the girl, would have been at least 15 years later, I think, by memory, as a little Jack Russell Terrier. And when I commented on, from yay big to yay big, she couldn't have me as a horse this time round. She couldn't afford another horse, didn't have the room, but as a pocket rocket, I can fit into her lifestyle.
So he chose that vehicle because he knew it would work.
Yeah. And I don't know who was more discombobulated by that, her or me, but it is rare. And I have read other animal communicators talking. There was one gentleman, oh God, and I think this woman was in America, but we're talking a long time ago, but come back as a horse and had been a human. And when she was talking to him, obviously to the soul, and went, what the? He said, I wasn't very nice to horses. So I had to come back and learn my lesson by being a horse. So I haven't struck that at all. I don't think it's common, but as a guy I never knew in life, but he's certainly been around since, one of his pet sayings was never say never. Mm-hmm. And and followed by expect the unexpected, both of which I think in this case are correct. Well, I don't think any of us can make a hard and fast rule, because there's always going to be an exception.
Well, there's an infinite number of ways that we can express whatever things we can't even imagine. why couldn't we express as another species on this planet? I mean, why not? I think also we have in our minds that the soul is this contained presence that is floating around like a cloud, and then it gets, pushed into some type of physical form to have a life. And I have my doubts. I don't know, but I have my doubts that that's really the way it works. It seems to me that there's something about the DNA, not beyond just species, but there's something about the DNA that is it's a receiver, and it's calling in qualities of spirit in it that then combine to create that expression. But to say that it's, well, folks, let's try this for part two. That had to have been my fault because I'm the one hosting it. So for it to end means that my feed just died. So we were talking about what you were going to, I think, comment on souls and clouds, them being this contained cloud that I was saying, and being infused into a body. What's your take on that for animals or humans?
Well, as you were
Oh,
talking,
it's doing it again. What? Sorry.
that's all right.
Go ahead and keep going, Carolyn. I'll see if I can turn your volume up. I don't know how I did it before, but I did it. Go ahead.
Mecca was saying that a lot of it depends, you've now muted yourself, on what and the group needs. So